More than 2 weeks since the presidential election in Honduras, the fight over who is the legitimate winner continues. The Electoral Tribunal of Honduras says that it has completed a recount of more than 4,700 ballot boxes and that the result remains unchanged. Officially, the conservative incumbent President Juan Orlando Hernandez is the winner with 43%. His main challenger, Salvador Nasrallah, a TV host and candidate of a center-left alliance of parties, got 41.4%. However, Nasrallah and his supporters say massive electoral fraud occurred during the November 26 vote and that the partial recount is invalid.
Mientras no se revisen los cuadernillos y no se revisen los votos, voto por voto, y no se revise el sistema con una auditoría forense, no puede valer lo que están haciendo. Por lo tanto, tiene que repetirse completamente si quieren quedar bien con la mayoría del pueblo hondureño. Ahora, si no les interesa el pueblo hondureño, hagan lo que quieran.
Heather Gies, a freelance reporter and editor for the website Upside Down World, who is in Tegucigalpa, Honduras, says the opposition alliance remains steadfast in its call for a full recount.
What the opposition is calling for is a complete recount of the vote. They maintain that they have won this election. Juan Orlando Hernandez is in the lead because of fraud, they say. They have won this election, and so they're calling for a full recount of the vote. The Liberal Party and some sections of civil society have called for this election to completely be voided and for new elections to be called, but the alliance has said that that would be a last resort alternative, and what they want is a complete recount of the vote. So that means opening up the ballot boxes from over 18,000 polling stations and recounting vote by vote. They also say that it's important for this process to happen under the supervision of a international independent commission, not the Supreme Electoral Tribunal that has been conducting this vote counting process, because they say that that tribunal has completely lost all credibility. The Liberal Party has also said that the tribunal has lost credibility. So this is something that's quite different from the partial recount that the Supreme Electoral Tribunal conducted over the weekend, which was a vote-by-vote recount of just over 4,700 ballot boxes. So that's about just over 1/4 of the more than 18,000 ballot boxes that the opposition is talking about. But the opposition has also criticized that partial recount because it didn't take into account this scrutiny of the signatures and the voter rolls.
Last week, the news magazine The Economist analyzed the pattern in which the Electoral Authority announced the election results. On the night of the vote, with 57% of all ballots counted, opposition candidate Salvador Nasrallah had 5 percentage point advantage over incumbent President Hernandez. Then, with the next announcement of the results, 2 days later, Hernandez was ahead by 1.4 percentage points. The government argued that the reason for the shift was that rural votes came in later and tended to support Hernandez. However, upon analyzing the rural vote, it is clear that Hernandez received no disproportionate support in rural areas compared to his support in urban areas. Despite this and other evidence of fraud, the Trump administration continues to provide tacit support to the government of Honduras. Protests have taken place now not only against the government of Juan Orlando Hernandez, but also against his U.S. ally.
So there's been a number of opposition rallies, most recently, in terms of the largest one. On Sunday, thousands of people again took to the street in support of the opposition, condemning fraud and calling for the tribunal to carry out a transparent process. So that took place in Tegucigalpa and other cities around the country. And that was the second Sunday in a row where tens of thousands of people took to the streets. So that's been kind of the most visible mobilization, but there are also other mobilizations taking place. On Friday, there were demonstrations also in the capital that marched to the U.S. Embassy. And that was to put pressure on the U.S. Embassy to also condemn what they see as fraud happening in this election. And in reality, the U.S. Embassy has taken a different position. The U.S. Embassy, which doesn't have an ambassador, hasn't had an ambassador in Honduras for several months, but the Chargé d'Affaires here, Heidi Fulton, had been quite quiet on the entire election process, even while the European Union and Organization of American States observation missions were pointing out that there were numerous irregularities in the process that led them to have doubts about the certainty of the election results. The U.S. Embassy representative, on the other hand, had been quite silent, making some kind of empty statements about, respect for democracy and this sort of thing. However, over the weekend, Heidi Fulton, the U.S. Embassy representative, appeared in a press conference beside David Matamoros, who's the head of the Supreme Electoral Tribunal, who, as I mentioned, is a very questioned individual and possibly we could say the most embattled person amid all of these fraud allegations, aside from the president himself. So that was a very controversial appearance because for members and supporters of the opposition, her appearing beside David Matamoros was sort of like a tacit endorsement of this very questioned process that's been going on with the elections.
Just a few days after the presidential election, the State Department renewed an aid package of millions of dollars to President Hernandez's government, praising him for fighting corruption and supporting human rights. In 2009, the U.S. government supported a coup against then-President Manuel Zelaya. Since then, the U.S. government has given the conservative governments in Honduras all the support they needed, regardless of the human rights situation and the deaths of hundreds of activists. This is a pattern of support for conservative neoliberal governments the U.S. has been pursuing throughout Latin America, successfully removing leftist governments such as in Haiti, Brazil, Argentina, and Paraguay in recent years. What happens in Honduras next is unclear, but it seems that there is no real effort to defuse the situation.
I don't think we're close to the crisis being resolved or these protests against this very embattled elections process being stamped out. And I'm kind of getting the sense from folks that this partial recount that the Supreme Electoral Tribunal conducted over the weekend may just be the kind of seal of approval on a very questioned process that they need in order to move forward and announce Hernandez as the next president, which, like I said, is just going to further fuel this crisis.